You're very welcome back. Now, from turning heads in the Love Island villa to dazzling on the Strictly dance floor, our next guest is a bit of a reality telly pro.
But regardless of the challenges she's taken on, she's always championed her deaf identity. Please welcome Tasha Ghouri to the show. Good morning, Tasha. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
It's lovely to see you, because we've got to add author now to all of the multi-hyphenates that you have. Tell us about your book.
Yeah, so Your Superpower has launched. It is officially here. It's basically like being on FaceTime with me. I feel like I'm not old enough to do an autobiography just yet. So it's more like a memoir. And you come to me for advice about how to get through life struggles, self-confidence, self-love. It's not just for people with disabilities, it's for anybody. And there's 6 chapters in there. Each chapter delves deep into my experiences. Got my affirmations, kind of songs I listen to, what I do in my spare time, and how to overcome obstacles with a positive mindset, and how to get through situations as hard as it is. There's always the brighter side and the other side. And just got my parents in there, and they have a beautiful, raw, honest PowerPoints throughout the book as well. So they share from their side what it's like from a parent's perspective.
It's amazing and it's great. Well done for bringing out a book like this, because it is called Your Superpower. You were born deaf, and you've talked about that recently, about it being a superpower. How important, or how much would you have loved a book like this back when you were growing up?
I would have loved a book like this growing up. You know, even in the TV industry, there was nobody where I could look up to and relate with. I didn't feel seen or heard. Probably wasn't up until Rose, and I was 22 years old. So that's how long it took. And especially in the book industry, there wasn't any book where I could go and be just kind of have that person to really relate with. You know, especially being born into a hearing family, no one could understand struggles I was going through day in and day out. So I felt really isolated. So this is why I said, like, you know what, this is perfect for not just for the younger generation, but for the parents, for anybody, any age. I really want to make it an all-rounder. So yeah, this is super exciting. But, you know, that's all I want to do, is just be able to help people out there.
Because there's an interesting thing in the deaf community, and it's, you know, people who continue to use sign language and lip read, and there's also the cochlear implant community, and sometimes, you know, it's a culture. Like there's a whole things that are going on within the deaf community. For you, at one stage when you were a teenager, your cochlear implant wasn't working, so you weren't able to communicate because you didn't use sign language. Is that right?
Yeah, so I used British Sign Language. I was fluent in that until the age of 6. I couldn't use speech, and I had a cochlear implant when I was 5, so that's my only form of language. And after speech therapy, I had to force myself to stop using British Sign Language. Nobody else in school used it as well, so slowly I kind of lost my ways with that. I still talk with my hands, but I lost my actual language with my hands. And then when I was 16, it broke, and I had to get a whole new re-implant. I couldn't hear for about 5 to 6 months. So I still was going to college. I still was, you know, getting on the train. I was trying to make a positive light out of that situation. But, you know, like you said, I can only rely on lip reading at that point, because nobody used sign language, and I forgot how to use it. So it really was a tough challenge. But in that situation, I had to adapt. You know, it could happen again in the future. And I really had to think, OK, I can make a positive thing out of this and not be at home upset and going into a hole about it. I had to get out there and adapt, unfortunately. But yeah, that's just because due to school, nobody else used it, and I really had to force my speech more to communicate with my friends.
It's interesting, even in the book you talk about in school, teachers, and how the education system isn't built for people who are deaf. And things like you would be lip reading, but the teacher would have to turn around to write something on the board, and then you wouldn't be able to know what's going on. I mean, there's huge areas of this that people probably don't embrace and aren't aware of.
Yeah, school was definitely a tough challenge, you know, especially when you're doing 6 to 7 lessons a day. I was absolutely drained by halfway through, you know. I started sleeping in classes. I'd be put at the back of a class as well, and really I should be at the front. And, you know, there's times where teachers would speak behind a computer or turn away, but I rely on lip reading. There'd be times where people speak over each other. So school was really a tough time to navigate, and that's just purely because teachers weren't deaf aware. Whereas I think nowadays it definitely is changing. It is getting better in the school educational world. And, you know, unfortunately, actually, the GCSE, BSL course has been pushed back for another 2 years, which is a shame, because that would have been a great opportunity, not just for deaf students to learn British Sign Language, it's for anybody. And that could have made us feel more included. So I feel like the educational, it feels like step forward and then steps back sometimes. But yeah, teachers definitely do need to learn to be deaf aware, because it really can make someone lose out on so much information.
It is interesting, though, because we hear it all the time. If awareness is out there, it improves everything for everybody. And my God, going on Love Island is certainly putting yourself out there, Tasha. And everyone's experience is subjective to themselves. You have said it was great for your self-awareness and self-love, which is not what we associate with Love Island.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like Love Island, it is a bit of a social experiment. You are growing as a person in there. I walked in there a completely different person walking out. And that's purely because I learned how to communicate, how to deal with conflicts, how to deal with pressure inside. You just met these people. So you really are kind of working on yourself throughout the whole journey. But yeah, Love Island was definitely, I look back and I smile because I had a great time, and it was a great opportunity. I went up for representation. It gave me the platform I have now, and it gave me a beautiful relationship out of that as well. So it definitely was, it was once in a lifetime opportunity, and I just grabbed it by the hands.
You were in a great year of Love Island as well, and obviously you just lost out to Ekin-Su and Davide. Yourself and Andrew went on to form a relationship for a couple of years, which was great to see in a coming out of a social experiment like you just mentioned there. But you've just recently broken up, and I know that you're kind of caught in the middle of a media furore now, who's following who and who's not following who. How difficult is it being caught up in this whole what's going on online and just trying to keep your head down?
It's hard, it's not easy. Every day there's something that pops up, and a breakup is a breakup, and I feel like because it's in a public eye, I feel like it's on a magnifying glass, and it's really zoomed in. Every single action is really taken so big. And I say I had a beautiful relationship with Andrew. We made so many beautiful memories together. We've got a house together, had all these amazing things together. And unfortunately, sometimes it just doesn't work out, and that's okay. And I think breakups just generally do happen every day, and it's just life, isn't it? That's how it is. But it's very hard when every day it's kind of in the press a lot. But I just have to keep my head down, looking forwards, and just keep doing what I'm doing. And the thing that's helping me now is just doing things like this, and that makes me keep going, the motivational part of that.
It's kind of refreshing that you do talk about him in the book and the plans that you had, because, you have Tommy Fury out there doing a whole book tour and we're not allowed to talk about Molly May, but you kind of address it in the book, which is so lovely, because you also did another thing. You went on to a show where they basically start like looking for truffles. They snout through the dirt when you go on Strictly. It's called The Relationship Killer. And I remember when you were on Strictly, every day, like, that is insane, that pressure on your relationship, who you're doing, what's going on. What was that like on Strictly?
Yeah, there's this whole Strictly curse thing, and it's like it was nothing to do with Strictly. I had the best time on that show. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, especially when people are trying to find something, like, for example, me and Jamie Borthwick, we are great friends. I see him as a brother. We even laugh about it to this day when the press are trying to make us like we were dating. I was looking at Jamie like, come on, like, Jamie, I love him, but, I see him as like a brother. So that was really difficult, was trying to navigate through that and going through a breakup at the same time, but also coming back up Strictly, which was the biggest point of my life and my career. So I had all these emotions going on at the same time, and it did get really hard at the start of the year. I was really struggling just to even leave the house, even go see my friends. But now I'm in a much better place now, I feel like it's getting better, it's getting there, I'm healing, and it's just a process, isn't it, with breakups? But at the time when it happened, it was really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Time heals these things as well. I mean, you were incredible.
So good, Tasha.
Strictly. Now, it's not fair. Like, you were already a bloody good dancer before you went on it. Like, what chance did everybody else have?
You're so good.
You were. But, like, you were obviously so good that they were kind of, right, your dancing was amazing. But you also then decided to jazz up your cochlear implant as well. I mean, did you do that? Putting all the diamonds and stuff on it? It must have taken ages.
I mean, I started doing it myself for the first 2 to 3 weeks, and the costume team came up to me and said, we'll happily do it for you. So they had the better gems than I did. I got mine off Amazon. They have the expensive, real good stuff. So they were like, we would love to do it for you. And I said, oh my God, that's so lovely. So every week they decorated it for me to match my costume, which is so nice because I feel like, especially a show like Strictly, you have so many young kids watching it. So they were sending me decorating theirs, and their parents saying, "Oh, my child decorated her hearing aid cocker implant because she saw yours dancing on TV." So that's the power of representation. It really is beautiful to see, especially with Strictly. It's about dancing, it's about just enjoying the moment.
It was gorgeous.
While everybody else is practicing, she's too good that she has time to do this.
Yeah, trust me, I was putting in my hours. I was really putting in my hours.
You were a total joy to watch. Yourself and Ash, you were runners-up, and you talk about all of this and the things that you have been through in such in a positive way. The book is called Superpower. Your Superpower, Embrace What Makes You Different. It's available now. Tasha Ghouri, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Tasha.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
You too.
A dote.
Great.
Now coming up, some marvellous men's fashion on the catwalk.
Plus, my old pal Paul O'Connell is going to be here for a chat. We'll see you after the short break.